Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 38 for the finale of Season 2 at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. If you guys did miss the previous episode at the Brazilian GP, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one, because as penultimate episodes go to a season, that was an absolute corker involving 20 disqualifications ahead of a wheel even being turned and 5 red lights going for the Sunday Grand Prix. And some pretty controversial and dramatic things happened in that episode on part of the FIA. I still can't process what actually happened there, and it felt a little bit like we'd been cheated out. And it means going into this final episode, Lewis Hamilton is the one that leads the way by 3 points to myself, and then 5 points back is the double reigning world champion Max Verstappen. Of course, he won in Season 1, and that has a strong chance of matching what we're seeing in real-life Formula 1. But here in the second season of this My Team Career Mode, we have very much diverged and forged already our own massively alternative F1 universe. And if you haven't been able to catch any of Season 2, or you're just new around here and you want to get caught up on what's happened in Season 2, well, let's take you through a quick summary. So the season began with a renewed Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, and he went on to win the first 3 races in a row of this season, from Bahrain to Saudi Arabia to the Australian Grand Prix. The Silver Arrows were back, and they were looking to make a statement against this man, the reigning champ, and his team Red Bull Racing. Verstappen, a very sluggish start, but eventually got off the mark with a win at the Imola GP. At this stage, we then got a surprise win across the pond for Daniel Ricciardo in the States, winning for McLaren in what would, well, we didn't know at the time, but would be his last season in Formula 1 as he retires from this season. We then kicked off the European portion of the season, where George Russell became the master of Monaco. At this point, the Mercedes cars looking pretty darn good. But then Baku came, and a shocker, because Alexander Albon, our teammate, became our team's first ever win on this game. For the second year running, my AI teammate has been the one to be on the top step of the podium before myself in my own team. We were looking to take revenge in our own glory in the next round at Canada, but then disaster. Just as I was about to attack Albon for the race lead, my engine went up in smokes. It was a 1-2 at Baku. It was looking like a 1-2 at Canada. But alas, my engine gave out, and we never had the opportunity to fight Albon in that race. And he went on to win a second race in a row. Albon had finally arrived properly in Formula 1 for our team. But we didn't give up in our pursuit of our very first win on the F1 22 game in My Team Career Mode. And eventually, third time lucky, at the home GP at Silverstone, it came good, and we won our first race on this game. At this point, 3 wins in a row for aarava Archer Racing, a really dominant display as of late as we kicked into the main portion of the European part of the season. Up until these 3 races, it was looking like it was going to be Verstappen versus Hamilton 2.0 here on this game, but we had arrived, our team had arrived, and we were leading both championships, the drivers and the constructors. Austria then showed us what Lando Norris can do when he's got the car that's capable, and he won at the Red Bull Ring. A disaster for Red Bull, as they had a double no points finish, with the 2 drivers of Perez and Verstappen actually coming together. Mercedes also having a bit of a messy race. Then we went to Belgium, and in the most wacky race ever, I was able to win my second ever race on this game on intermediates, on a dry track ahead of a very quick Lewis Hamilton. At this point in the season, on paper in the R&D chart, our car was the best. It was superior to Mercedes and Red Bull, and we looked to just control our lead. Wins would come then for Verstappen at the Italian Grand Prix. Ferrari, after a very strong qualifying, floundering at their home race. Singapore came with Russell shining again and getting Alexander Albon after an embarrassing spin off the lead of the Grand Prix in wet conditions. That would be the beginning of the end for Albon Albon's good run of form and would open up the door for the Silver Arrows to start closing us down in the Constructors. Mexico, a shock new race winner in Formula 1. The Schumacher name back on the top step. Mick Schumacher, a race winner in Formula 1. A pretty fit reward for Haas, who have been doing quietly quite well this season to keep up with Ferrari and Alpine in the Constructors fight. McLaren, consistent as ever at this point, closing the gap to Red Bull. And we still had a comfortable gap in the championship ahead of Hamilton and Verstappen. Then the last race came, the Brazilian GP, and under safety car, the FIA, well, I don't really know what happened, but we got a drive-through penalty for a delta time I was never going to match. A delta time that would have taken me behind my rival, which did take me behind my rival, and he failed to get a penalty for overtaking me under yellows, whilst myself and Verstappen floundered for lower points. Hamilton was consistent from the sprint to the main Grand Prix on the second step of the podium behind Lando Norris, who got his second win of the season, and it meant that Hamilton was able to take the lead of the Drivers' Championship for the first time since the very start of this season, and leads the way going to one final race at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Verstappen getting some points on myself whilst I finished in stone dead last, feeling very hard done by the FIA, and that is why right now it is a three-way championship decider, and why it's all to play for, as we're one measly point behind Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship. It's been a very topsy-turvy second half of the season, a bit disillusioning in many ways, and seeing our Constructors lead slip away with Albon performing quite poorly. Our car as well, in an arms race, we have been caught by Red Bull and Mercedes, and only now are we going to get back onto the top of the R&D chart with an ultimate weight reduction upgrade and a minor DRS upgrade on the aero side of things. So going into Abu Dhabi, we will actually finally again be the best team on the grid, technically, but it has been a massive arms race, and of course you guys voted for at the very start of this career mode in Season 1 for career mode settings that mean the AI have boosted R&D, boosted cash, and I have reduced of both, and it's meant that in this second half, with my teammate falling away and falling out of form, and us having a bit of a topsy-turvy few races where Hamilton and Verstappen have been able to get ahead of us, and our car maybe hasn't performed as well as we wanted to. It meant that right at the end where it mattered, you can see in the last three races, our car really did slip quite under performance, and we've only gotten it back just now in time for the final race. Well, I guess in many ways that's exactly why you guys voted for those settings, because it meant that the AI could keep up with me and actually over upgrade me in the second part of the season, whilst we had that cushion to close that gap, and it's made things very exciting. And it means here we are then going into Yas Marina for the final race. Hamilton leads by 3 points, Verstappen's 5 points back from me, and it's all to play for in one final round here in this last Grand Prix. But first and foremost, we have qualifying, of course, to set the grid. And as I said, it's not just our battle in the Drivers' Championship. The Constructors is on the line. Our first ever potential Constructors titles on the line, with Mercedes leading now by 1 point, and Albon not scoring very highly in the last couple of races have really hurt that chance of us getting that first title. There's also fights elsewhere. You know, you've got Alpine, Ferrari, and Haas locked into a battle for P5, 6, and 7 in the championship. P3 and 4 is up for grabs because McLaren, with Lando winning 2 races in the last 5 episodes, I believe it is, and Ricciardo with that win earlier on this season, they've actually been quietly doing some business, and they are actually catching Red Bull in for third place. So even though Verstappen's in this title fight, Perez has been a lot lower, and the two McLarens have been so consistently together and high in points that that is a fight in itself. So plenty of different stories to kind of, you know, tie up in this second chapter of this book that we are forming of F1 22 My Team Career Mode. But we're through into Q2, a kind of formality, of course, at this stage of the career now. Ricciardo getting out of our way in his final ever Formula 1 race. Final races for Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel, remember, because both AI drivers announced they are retiring out of F1. I think it was at the Belgium Grand Prix in that episode, and so their final outings in F1. So there's going to be some interesting seats to fill at the end of this season into Season 3. Q2, we go for a second run, because I didn't think we were going to be comfortable enough on that first run, and I was correct to think so, because we're P6 at the moment. We've gained nearly half a second alone just off the kind of right-hander down the hill in Sector 1. Just took a little bit more curb, I would say, and a bit more momentum through there. Purple second sector to be up to nearly 7/10. We're down to P10, so we're on the cusp. So this second lap was very much needed to get us through into the top 10 shootout, not be embarrassed in the final race. And so we do get through. Russell and Hamilton, Perez and Verstappen, and Albon and myself. That's good. That's good that Albon's through in a race where I desperately need him to score some points to help our fight versus Mercedes. He's actually now picked up the pace a little bit, and potentially that ultimate upgrade, you know, the weight reduction upgrade, I think that is very much a big factor on how well your AI teammate does, because I think it just makes the car faster in every area and allows them to perform. But yeah, it's we wouldn't be in this position if he didn't have that kind of off form in the last couple episodes. But here we go then. Enough talk about that. Let's talk about the actual qualifying. A bit wide on that entry of the left-hander on our first run in a top 10 shootout. We want to try and aim for as high as we can. Hamilton setting the fastest lap of the session so far, provisional pole, but of course the first run will have a second go at it. Across the line for us, and we are now provisional pole ahead of Lando Norris, ahead of Hamilton. Albon there P4, Ricciardo P5, but others still yet to come in. Perez and Russell and Verstappen eventually do. So Russell in some fine form on provisional pole here now with Verstappen on a provisional front row. But the second runs are a go and everyone's going quicker. We've had a red first sector, green the second though, to gain about 4.5 tenths there. We're down to P8. Hamilton's only P7 though. I think Verstappen a bit higher. Albon, I believe, has actually pulled out the bag and has actually done a very good lap to get himself on the front row potentially. What is it going to be for us? Across the line, and it's going to be P3, and that's a very strong showing for myself and Albon for the constructors fighting P2 and 3. Russell takes the final pole of the season. Verstappen P4, Hamilton down in P8. Interesting. Ricciardo P10 with the grid penalty. Speaking of, let's just go straight to the Sunday grid to see if there are any other grid penalties for engine components, and then we can talk about how this race may shape up. Let's go to Sunday.
It's the final chapter of the season then here at the spectacular Yas Marina circuit. It's a race where the pole sitter failed to finish in 3 of the first 4 events. A front row start here is by no means a guarantee of victory. We go into battle once more then as we get underway at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The drivers will be racing here at Yas Marina circuit through 21 corners and a lap distance of around 3.4 miles. There are a few opportunities to pass with long straights and DRS zones in 2 places, turns 8 and 11. Plenty of close racing then, plenty of speed and plenty of drama to be found in the laps ahead. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. George Russell will begin today's event in pole position, just edging out Alex Albon, who will start from P2. Considering the rest of the grid we have the owner driver, Verstappen, Carlos Sainz and Norris, Leclerc, Mick Schumacher, Joe and Oscar Piastri, Bottas, Perez, Sir Lewis Hamilton. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. And Stroll, Drugovich, Vettel, Esteban Ocon and Daniel Ricciardo. Tsunoda, they've taken a grid penalty. Magnussen, Gasly and Nicholas Latifi. Now, it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you here with us today. But I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
In one final twist before we go to 5 red lights for this final race, Lewis Hamilton has to take a set of engine penalties, and he starts this race down in P13. So that is a massive win for myself and Verstappen potentially as well, who's looking to try and overtake both myself and him in the Drivers' Championship in this final race. Myself and Verstappen have both opted to start on the soft compound of tyre. You know, if we want to try and have a go for the constructors, ideally me and Albon need to be attacking Russell and I reckon the soft compound will be a good way to do that. We'll see what the tyre wear levels are like, but with the upgrades we've got on tyre wear, potentially we could even still do a one-stop from the soft compound onto the hards, and I think Verstappen's thought that as well. Also, with Hamilton down in P14, both of us, I think the thinking is making the most of a soft compound, pulling away as much as we can ahead of Lewis, who's going to get stuck in traffic inevitably, making his way through from P14. But also, maybe just a covering tactic. Myself and Verstappen covering each other off on the soft compound, whereas everyone else on medium. So this really is like blinkers on, and we're just looking at each other in this championship fight. Albon on the second row, I need him to do a job today versus Russell. And then for us, I mean, just as usual, race our heart out and try and get the highest position we can. There's also going to be some looking over at what Verstappen is doing, what Hamilton is doing in terms of his progress later in this race, to make sure we don't get caught out like some drivers have before in a finale race. But we're now setting the grid for the final time in Season 2, and I get a bit over-eager with trying to get a perfect grid slot, and I actually push myself back because we failed to park in a good position. So that's a little bit frustrating. So we're a bit further back in our grid position versus everyone else on the grid, but we're not going to let that fluster us, because this is it. One final race in Season 2 to decide both championships. Hamilton versus Verstappen versus myself. Aarava Archer Racing versus Mercedes. And we all look to 5 little red lights to get us underway. Lights out, away we go. It's a good start for Albon. It's a slow one for the pole sitter. And Verstappen comes through on the inside of us, and we're nearly 3 abreast as Norris and Sainz attack us either side. It's a slow getaway, all things considered, for us, and Verstappen making contact with Albon. Our teammate needs to do us a favour. Can he hold up Verstappen? No, he can't. And instead, we're going to send one down the inside, get the elbows out, and we're going to have to do the job ourselves as we're up into P3. Verstappen up into P2. Russell leads the way after a very poor getaway for the pole sitter. Kind of settled in after turn 1 and leads this race. Behind, fighting going on with Carlos Sainz and the Haas making a kamikaze dive. He already overtook his old teammate and old pal Lando Norris and has a go at Albon. I really hope that's not a sign of things to come for Albon in this race in terms of his race pace. The 2 Ferraris having a bit of a squabble. Piastri and Leclerc's been going all season between the 2 Scarlet cars. Meanwhile, back to our POV, Verstappen with a wobble on the rear end, maybe feeling the tyre wear already on those old soft tyres, but we get oh so close, but just can't make a move. I think if we went any quicker through that right-hander, we may have actually made contact fully with Verstappen and maybe had some damage. So thankful actually that we backed out of that and didn't have the overspeed, as that would have been a calamity so early on in this race. Is now there's full yellows, and the full course safety car is called out for an incident early on, and this is why then on board with Tsunoda in stone dead last, looking at Latifi on the left hand side, the Alpine ahead of us. He's side by side with Latifi, and Latifi breaks his front wing on the Alpine, and the debris causes the safety car. So the Canadian, not for the first time, causing a safety car at Abu Dhabi. But here's an onboard then from Lewis Hamilton, P14 with the grid penalties on the mediums, and it's a slow getaway for the Brit, who gets overtaken by Lance Stroll and the Aston Martin on the inside there. That's the opposite of what he needed at the start of this Grand Prix. He's looking to re-overtake him, but he's actually going to lose a bit of pace down this hill, and the Aston Martin will shoot one down the inside of the Red Bull car and do what kind of almost he had to do on Sergio Perez. So we'll keep an eye on Hamilton's progress through this race, but at the moment, not an ideal start for the man leading the World Championship going into this final race. But here we are then, all things calm right now on lap 3, but the safety car is coming in and we'll get underway once again. And it'll be full pelt from myself and Verstappen, looking to try and maybe get Russell on this restart. Green flags go. We get a bit of snap of oversteer on the exit curb, and we lose a bit of time to Verstappen. And Russell just seems to be driving on a different level in the second half of this season and pulls away from Verstappen despite being on the medium tyre versus the soft compound. But let's see how it goes on the remainder of this lap. So potentially maybe just Russell, being the leader, is able to warm up the tyres a bit quicker. Verstappen definitely now a lot closer to us than he is to Russell, and I'm sensing like we've got to move here on the Dutchman to get into second place and then have clean air of our own to chase after the race lead. We're gaining, but just not enough on this straight. Of course, DRS now won't be activated for another lap or so, but we're strong under braking. That new weight reduction upgrade into this race, making the car feel a bit more lively midway through some of these corners, out of slow corners, and we may not need the DRS. We're using a lot of the battery here to gain on Verstappen and send one down the inside of the new long left-hander here at Yas Marina, and we'll stick tight on the inside line to get up into P2, but Verstappen comes back at us. We're neck and neck now, and Verstappen makes contact with us and shoves us off onto the curb. He's got a bit too deep. We come back through for the switchback, but Verstappen gets the elbows out for the second time on this lap and sector to remain in second place. We remain in third, and Albon and the whole train now have closed up behind us, but Verstappen is standing firm on this defence. Russell pulling away nearly 3 seconds into the lead of this race. This is desperate times to get up into second, to try anything to catch that silver arrow. Verstappen gives us a good old squeeze on the left-hand side, but we should have this under braking on the inside line, and we'll take the next apex. Engine failure for the Ferrari. Oscar Piastri is going slow into that left-hander that we just went through, and he was having a good go at his teammate Leclerc, but now he's going to end off his first season in Formula 1 and for the Scuderia with the engine going up in smokes, and he's going to be out of this Grand Prix, and we'll probably be already looking to reset and go again for a fresh start in Season 3. Back to the lead. Russell leads the way by 2.7. We're already maybe starting to make a little bit of a dent into that lead, though, because I think Verstappen was driving a little bit slower than I potentially could in clean air. Verstappen, though, was so defiant, so aggressive with the defence, as he is a lot of the time in real life, and he comes in now. He comes in for an early pit stop. Lap 5, he is in. This is a lot earlier than you would expect a pit stop to be doing a one stop onto hard tyres. So as we go through, remaining in second, Albon out to third, and Verstappen puts on the medium. So that confirms the Red Bull car is doing a two-stop, and potentially that's got me thinking, do we need to move to a two-stop? You know, if he's pitting for a reason. The tyre wear is pretty high already in terms of percentages. I think we're already well over, 30% on these tyres, and you can see now, after initially gaining a bit of time, Russell's pulled the gap back to 3 seconds, so the medium compound is performing better. And so in a race like this where a title's on the line, we've got to try and cover off our rivals, and we're going to cover off Verstappen and come in and convert to a two-stop and go to a fresh set of medium tyres. Hamilton at this stage is still behind a load of slower cars. He's just outside the top 10, so he's still not even scoring points in this race. So right now my focus is on Verstappen, and it's a front wing change. Oh no, and it's a slow one. Oh, this is a disaster. This is a nightmare. This is the opposite of what you want in the finale race. The damage must have come from one of those battles with Verstappen, and it's meant the team has decided to change the wing on their own accord. Of course, previously in this season I got mad at my team for not changing the front wing, so I guess their thought is that I would rather have the rest of the race with a full front wing to just go out and drive the maximum, so there's no excuse on the table in terms of the car having a bit of damage. But it means now I have some ground to make up, about a couple of good 8 seconds to Verstappen. But the thing is, he's got to catch this entire train, so he may be slowed up, so that 8 seconds may actually wear down very quickly, because it's going to be very easy to catch some cars. It's another thing to overtake them, as the famous words were from Murray Walker. So Verstappen, even though he'll maybe catch these guys, you've got some fighting going on like this, with Sergio Perez going right round the outside of Valtteri Bottas to get up into P8, and Hamilton now for the first time is in points paying positions in P10, but he is being held up by the Alfa Romeo now, and will have to get past him himself, just like Sergio did. So the dynamic of this race has changed very much so. Hamilton will be the one with track position potentially on a one stop, but he's stuck behind traffic, slower cars, and is just generally looking quite slow like he was in previous episodes here in this second half of the season. And myself and Max on fresher tyres will be looking to chase, and Verstappen is doing just that as he gets Yuki Tsunoda. We overtook Latifi, who came in for his pit stop, and now we're up into P19, and we're looking to close down Tsunoda as our next target. And you can see the gap is only now 2.6 seconds, so Verstappen has been making very slow progress, it must be said. He's been held up by Tsunoda, and he's now only on the back of Ocon and Stroll now. You can see, look at all those cars up the road that he has to overtake, and I have to overtake, to be fair. But the thing is, I think I'm going to get through those cars a bit quicker than he will, because we are now on the same straight as him, as we see Stroll and Ocon going side by side, the Canadian versus the Frenchman on board with Verstappen. Will he look to make a double pass? He gets the exit. He's going to have DRS and ERS at his disposal, and here he goes. Verstappen on the outside. It's 3 abreast into the next long left-hander, and Verstappen goes all the way around the outside for a fantastic overtake, it must be said, to get up into P15. So it's almost like he heard me insulting his overtaking prowess there in this traffic, and he got a move on and got 3 cars done on 1 lap. We'll look to do the same, but in one sector. We can do one better. We're going to go get Tsunoda on the inside. Stroll and Ocon are still fighting for P16, lads. Is it really that deep? Stroll and Ocon making contact. We're now losing time, desperate time to Verstappen. We're going to shoot through on the inside and go for a really, really late lunge across the apex. And we actually pull it off. A double overtake to get up into P16. And now, once again, in clean air to close up to Max. But he's going to be met with, once again, more traffic, more mobile chicanes. Now it's the other AlphaTauri of Gasly. He goes down the inside, bit of contact made. Gasly may be slow now off that overtake. So can we now shoot one down the inside? Maybe really good momentum and weight shift change from left to right with the car. And we're actually one with the car now these days, because that ultimate upgrade, I can't tell you how much of a difference it makes to how this car feels from the last couple of episodes. It feels like I've actually got like a proper Formula 1 car now in the corners where we can actually move about and have confidence. Gasly goes for the re-overtake. That's awkward. The junior sister team not doing Verstappen any favours. We're playing it very patient, because I sense we can make potentially multiple overtakes here and try and get Verstappen and Gasly, and maybe even our old teammate, our old pal, Felipe Drogovic. Here we go then. Where's Verstappen going to go? We're so close. It's going to be 4 wide momentarily. I am backing out of that. I saw that coming from a mile off. That was never going to end well, but Verstappen has made a double overtake again. Round the outside of that long left-hander, we're going to make the move on the exit on Drogovic, and then the inside of Pierre Gasly, and we're just sticking with Verstappen. He's just throwing back these cars like mobile hurdles, but we're just knocking them back and staying with him, and both of us driving at a maximum to try and make up this time for this 2-stop. But now we've got our chance to make a move on Max himself on the inside. Plenty of ERS used, but we've still got a lot in the tank left to try and push away here, because the second detection point is there, so Verstappen will have another chance to come through. But we're going to now use the ERS all the way down this straight to try and push away. We look behind to see where Max is, but we've got him covered, and now we can go chasing after the cars ahead. But the first round of pit stops and the last round of pit stops for the entire grid is now coming through. Vettel still yet to make that pit stop, and he's very slow. He's retiring out of Formula 1 after this race, and he's making sure he's getting involved in the championship potentially, because he really holds up myself, and we go a little bit wide of the final corner. Verstappen able to keep within 1 second on a new lap, but we're going to be up into P2 now of this Grand Prix. Verstappen back into P3, as everyone has now pit onto hard tyres that will go to the end on. But the battle is still on between myself and Verstappen. He's in DRS range. We're using ERS to try and keep ahead, but he's going to do it under braking. We bang tyres. The car gets caught on the curb a little bit. Verstappen has the inside line. We're trying to maintain the left-hand side of the circuit, and then on the exit, we actually get DRS back on Verstappen to try and pull back ahead, using the electrical battery as well to push ahead, but then too deep into the left-hander. Verstappen has a chance to get his nose in, and on the exit, you can see there he is in the mirrors. He's going to jump up. We're both using ERS probably. We're side by side, and Verstappen goes right round the outside, but this time, we're not going to let him shove us off the road. Gets the elbows out. We get the elbows back. We use the curb, and we go on the outside. No damage on the car this time round, and we get back into second place We weren't having it. I could just see it from a mile off as Verstappen comes in now. He comes in for his second pit stop. That was a bit earlier than I thought it would be, so he's decided we're battling too much, and it's maybe hampering both our progresses to catch back ultimately in this race on this 2-stop. So he's in, and he's going to use the clean air on the out lap on the hard compound, but we're going to cover him off again and come in on the very next lap for our hard tyres. So even though this 2-stop ends off on a hard compound, because these hards are going to be about 5 laps fresher, we should have some pretty good pace by the end of this race. Because by the end of it, those hard tyres are going to be feeling it just a little bit, just enough to get us through. And also remember that top pack of the top 10, they were so close together after Russell and Albon, so they may be losing time to each other. And look at that on the left hand side, Hamilton is still behind Sergio Perez. He's up into P6, but he's behind a Red Bull that he's been looking at for the entire race. So that probably means that Hamilton's not actually making very good progress. He's just made those overtakes from the fact that he's in a Mercedes car, but in terms of versus Perez, he's not been able to do anything versus Checo. Verstappen dives down the inside of Sebastian Vettel, and for the second time we'll meet Sebastian, the 4-time world champion, and we'll look to make a bit of an easier overtake hopefully this time round, because on the exit of that left-hander we just find the wiggle room, ERS on the exit, and vault around the outside. Vettel actually tries to come back at us and give us a bit of a fight here, but we are ultimately going to get up into P12, and again we're chasing after Verstappen, who is chasing after traffic ahead. But both myself and him now need to go max attack to catch up to Lewis Hamilton in P6, which is doable, I believe, right by the end of this race. But if I look in hindsight, the 2-stop is a bit of a risky one. It's a risk that myself and Verstappen kind of committed to quite early with a soft compound, but I actually think that both of us thought we could do a 1-stop soft to hards, but those soft tyres wore out a lot quicker than we were hoping for. But the thing that will get us back into this race is the fresher tyres. But also remember, on the R&D chart, both myself and Red Bull as teams, we had a margin over Mercedes on paper. I know Russell's driving supreme, but Hamilton isn't. He's stuck behind Perez the entire race, so I think we can have a chance by the end of this race, but it's going to be a very close one because we're already on lap 22. There's only about 7 laps to go, so it is going to be touch and go. But here we are then looking to maybe make an overtake on Ricciardo, and Guan Yu Zhou's going to be 3 wide into the left-hander. Verstappen on the outside again for the 3rd time in this race. Verstappen makes an absolutely sensational double overtake maybe on the long left-hander. We've done Ricciardo, and now look to get on the inside of Guan Yu Zhou in the Alpine, get to the apex first, up into P9, and Verstappen P8. So both of us into the points-paying positions now for the first time since we made that extra stop. And now the car ahead of us is Schumacher, 1 car, and then it's Hamilton, who's behind Sergio Perez. And like Abu Dhabi 2021, could Perez play a part in this finale, I wonder? Right now, though, in clean air and no DRS to help him, Verstappen is a sitting duck. We're using everything in our arsenal to get past him. He's going to defend this on the inside, but crucially, I've saved up a lot of ERS and the battery to now push away and stay ahead of him, even though he'll have DRS on me on this next straight. And now we need to close up to Schumacher and Sergio Perez! Oh my God! Perez has made contact with Hamilton! Sergio Perez was pushing Hamilton off circuit. The absolute animal. Checo is trying to help us, trying to help Verstappen rather, but it's inadvertently going to help us out. That was Sergio Perez literally pushing Hamilton wide off circuit with the elbows fully extended out. I can't believe this. Drama in Abu Dhabi again with Perez and Hamilton. And look at this now on the main straight from P3 all the way down to P9. We're all on the same straight. Perez now being attacked by Mick Schumacher, but he's maybe done his job. He's slowed up Hamilton and everyone's bunched up together. And so we're now within 1 second of Schumacher, nearly 1.1. It'll be 1 second by the end of this straight as he's fighting Perez, and Perez actually lets him go. So Schumacher up into P6. P6. Hamilton's closed up to this battle between Norris and Leclerc. And the thing is, Ferrari, they want to get as many points as they can to maintain their position in the Constructors. So Leclerc's not going to give up that fight versus Norris, and neither is Norris to any cars behind him. So Hamilton is going to get held up by the McLaren and Ferrari squabbling, whilst myself and Verstappen arrive on the scene with Sergio Perez and Schumacher here. Now Perez, he must have some damage off that contact with Hamilton, because he pretty much was shoving him off with his front wing on that left-hander. So we're going to look to try and overtake him. He looks to have some okay pace through turns 1, but this is our time to pounce. If we can get past Sergio Perez and Schumacher on this lap, we've got a lot of clean air ahead of us whilst Hamilton's held up. So we're going to lick the stamp and absolutely send it down the inside of Sergio Perez, because we've got a postcard and the address is the World Championship up ahead. Hamilton being held behind Norris and Leclerc. We're gaining on Schumacher. DRS, not too much battery to use, but we're going to shoot it around the outside. It's very, very late on the braking, and we just about slow down the car enough to keep that in the white lines. And we're up into P6, and for the first time we can see Hamilton up the road. Meanwhile, Verstappen making the move on Perez, and Schumacher for the 4th time in this race. He's going to make this move round the outside. He really is the king of this overtake on this circuit, and he's up into P7. So for the first time, Hamilton, myself and Verstappen are all together on the timing ladder on the left-hand side. 1.6 seconds is the gap to Hamilton up ahead, and he's now being held more and more by Norris and Leclerc, as those two are locked into a battle for that final podium spot. And as we've seen so far in this race, and as of late in this last part of the season, Hamilton just doesn't have the aggression to make these moves. He's been stuck behind Perez the whole race. It took him till lap 23 or 4 to finally get past him there. So we are going to be within a chance of closing up now onto the second last lap of the Grand Prix. There is Hamilton, and we're behind by 3/4 tenths. Verstappen a bit further back. It's been myself versus Verstappen this entire race, so now it's finally time for us versus Lewis Hamilton. But there goes Lando Norris getting up into P3 versus Leclerc, and we're just playing the patient game, getting right underneath the gearbox and rear wing of Hamilton to try and make an overtake now on this next straight. DRS open. We don't have too much battery left. We're in single digits in terms of ERS, but that's not going to stop us from going for the lunge down the inside of Hamilton. We jockey for position for P5. We've tightened up our own line so Hamilton gets the better exit, but then we're using a bit of ERS. All we've got left in the tank to get us down the inside. Lewis on the curb. We get to the apex first. We're now side by side into the hotel section. Hamilton gets the elbows out. Contact made on the right-hand side, but we keep the car going on the right-hand side of the circuit, and we get up into P5 ahead of Hamilton and Verstappen for the first time in this race since that round of pit stops. And so here we go then into the final lap of this Grand Prix, an entire season of My Team Career Mode. But there needs to be one more twist in this entire story, because as you can see, myself and Hamilton, as it stands, would be level on points in this championship. He goes for a move on the outside. We defend into the left-hander hairpin, and he goes tight on the line, and now Verstappen closes up and is right under his gearbox. Both of them have DRS, and they're gaining. It's going to be 3 wide for the championship contenders on the last lap of the Grand Prix. Hamilton on the inside, Verstappen on the outside. We're going to try and squeeze Lewis wide on the right-hander, because we need Max Verstappen to overtake him. We need him to be ahead in P6 for us to win this championship. Hamilton is down to P7, but he's going to come back at Max, and he's going to get the elbow out for one last time and maintain P6. That may be it. That may be the nail in the coffin. Verstappen hasn't overtaken Hamilton, and Hamilton gets his revenge at Abu Dhabi at that corner. He's the one ahead of Verstappen this time, and it's going to mean, as we round the final corners, I can't do anything else. It's game over. I've tried my hardest, but the maths is going to add up for us to tie on points, and it's going to be Lewis Hamilton's 8th World Championship on a technicality of him winning more races this season. Myself and Hamilton finished the season level on points, but he wins it.
It's certainly been an incredible year for Formula One, and our drivers have pushed themselves this season, making it one of the most compelling years of racing in history. There can only be one champion, however, and here they are now, our new Formula One World Drivers' Champion. Victory today then, but bittersweet emotions, I'm sure, as the championship slips through their fingers. Even so, what a fantastic final race of the season this was. Anthony, tell me, what was it that helped them achieve this success?
I think that smart tyre management on track and very smooth driving definitely assisted in their victory today. That combination meant they got the absolute maximum out of their tyres at all times.
Mercedes are on top form once again after an excellent race weekend. It's great to see them up on that podium once again.
An unbelievable final race of Season 2. Russell dominated that one, wins the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Albon P2, Lando Norris in P3. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for both championships. I cannot believe we finished level on points. I actually thought I won it across the line. And then I was very surprised. My jaw dropped to the floor when that animation came up with Lewis doing donuts. Because I thought I'd done it. I thought all I had to do was get Hamilton. But the whole time, I actually had to also have Verstappen overtake him. Little did I know, Verstappen almost did it for me. He almost did it. But he didn't. But I didn't know that was a fight that had to happen at the time. And I crossed that line genuinely thinking I won the title. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. We're level on points. And he's won it. Because he won. He won the first 3 races of this season. And then didn't win again. And that's why he's won the title. Because I only won 2 races. That one race I lost to Albon at Baku could have potentially won me the title. Way back then. Oh my god. I'm actually lost for words. What a phenomenon. I actually can't fathom what's just happened. Mercedes have beat us. We didn't even win the Constructors. We are championshipless still on F1 22. We are yet to win either championship on F1 22. And this is how the entire season shaped up. Unbelievable. Guys, if you have enjoyed this final episode of Season 2, nay, the entire season, then be sure to smash that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below of that episode of the entire season. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content, because I'm going to have to take a moment, step back, but we all reset, and we're going to go again in Season 3 in a few days' time. And we're going to figure out what on earth Season 3 is going to look like off the back of that devastating loss versus Hamilton, Verstappen and Mercedes. Wow. My team career mode never fails to surprise me. There we have it. That's how it ends. I can't... For freak's sake.